Amigas e amigos do Clipping, bem-vindos, boa tarde, tudo bem com vocês? Estou vendo que já tem um punhado de gente aqui online acompanhando a gente, né? Gabriel Neri, a Mariana, Carolina Magra, como é que vocês estão? Tudo bem com vocês? Digam aí de onde vocês estão falando, meu nome é Romeu, né? Eu estou falando aqui de Maceió, e assim como vocês, né, eu também tenho o sonho de trabalhar no Itamaraty. E a grande notícia, o principal destaque dessa semana foi o lançamento do superaguardado edital para o concurso de oficial de chancelaria. Depois de 6 anos, né, a gente vai voltar a ter essa oportunidade de ingressar no Itamaraty por meio do concurso de off-chan, e é normal, viu, para todo mundo que tem esse sonho, está um pouco ansioso aqui agora, está um pouco inseguro. Lucas Brito falou do Rio de Janeiro, Ludmilla de Brasília, né? Ludmilla estava na nossa live de segunda-feira aí também, né? Acompanhou a gente. Um punhado de gente, ó, Maria Andrade de Recife. Beleza, pessoal. E imagino que tá todo mundo aqui querendo saber um pouquinho mais sobre o edital, sobre as particularidades da prova, e por isso a gente trouxe hoje um convidado super especial, que a gente vai focar na preparação para a disciplina de língua inglesa, que eu sei que para muita gente considera, né, a língua inglesa um grande desafio, e por isso é importante saber os meandros do edital, os meandros da prova. Mas antes, né, eu tenho um recado super importante para vocês, que é o seguinte. Já vi algumas perguntas aí no chat, da pessoa perguntando sobre a atualização do material, atualização do conteúdo que está na plataforma. Eu quero só ressaltar mais uma vez, como eu disse na segunda-feira, que a equipe do Clipping está trabalhando assim dia e noite, incansavelmente, para conseguir garantir que esse conteúdo da plataforma esteja atualizado o mais rápido possível, de acordo com as novidades do edital. Que a gente teve algumas novidades com relação ao conteúdo que a gente abordou na live de segunda-feira, que você pode acessar aí também pelo canal do YouTube, tá bom? Então, a gente está trabalhando aqui todos os dias e todos os alunos vão seguir sendo comunicados por meio dessas atualizações que a gente está fazendo, por meio do e-mail. Nós vamos receber e-mails à medida que essas atualizações forem subidas na plataforma, e também no mural da plataforma. A gente vai avisando vocês, né, à medida que esses conteúdos forem sendo atualizados. Além disso, nos próximos dias, a gente vai ter mais algumas informações importantes. Então, é muito relevante que vocês que estão acompanhando e esperando as atualizações, que fiquem ligados nos canais oficiais do Clipping, sobretudo por meio do e-mail, mas também na página do Instagram do Clipping. E o último lembrete aqui, que é o seguinte: o Clipping Off-Chan, que é o curso do Clipping, né? Ele está com matrículas abertas e com 35% de desconto. Pessoal, esse percentual de desconto ele vai acabar em determinado momento. Então, é necessário aproveitar essa oportunidade, porque essa preparação que o Clipping Off-Chan oferece, ela abarca todas as matérias, inclusive inglês, e as disciplinas do curso de formação, que é a segunda fase do concurso. Lembrando, a gente tratou todas as particularidades ali da primeira fase, segunda fase, estrutura do concurso, na live de segunda-feira. O curso Clipping Off-Chan, além de videoaulas, ele vai disponibilizar apostilas, indicações de leitura, simulados e também mais questões e outras ferramentas muito importantes para a sua preparação. Então, não perca tempo. E se matricule no curso. Nosso time vai estar lançando, vai estar compartilhando com vocês aí no chat o link, né, com esse desconto de 35%. Agora vamos assim, para a parte principal da nossa live, eu sei que está todo mundo esperando, né, que é o nosso convidado, que ele é especialista no ensino de inglês, com mestrado na Brigham University, lá do Reino Unido. Ele tem diploma de pós-graduação em ensino de adultos pela Cambridge e, é claro, ele é professor do Clipping. Professor Sean Dowling, boa noite, muito obrigado por aceitar esse convite de estar aqui conversando com a gente sobre a prova de inglês para oficial de chancelaria. Tudo bom com você?
Tudo bem, Romeu. É bom te ver, claro, é todo mundo. Vamos falar sobre especificamente, claro, agora Sebrasp, as mudanças do curso, que a gente tem, que é bastante coisas, ok? Claro, eu vou falar inglês um pouquinho, porque eu acho que todo mundo vai querer que eu fale com esse sotaque gringo, fala em inglês.
Nem tinha percebido o sotaque, Sean.
Eu acho que ninguém está percebendo. Mas vamos em frente, vamos falar sobre o concurso, mudanças, porque, é claro, o inglês é a área mais importante de todos os concursos do Itamaraty. realmente o que mudou foi a parte de writing. Parte de escrita, o que a gente tem aqui no Clipping é perfeito já, ok? Então, eu vou falar sobre o concurso, o edital, o que aconteceu no passado, comparar o material que a gente tem, porque as pessoas podem entrar começar o curso. Está atualizado? Não, porque ainda o writing tem que mudar. Mas, no primeiros passos, claro, a gente tem que ficar mais acostumado com como estudar para o offshore. É também a parte de leitura também, que já está lá. Então, vamos lá, vamos falar. Eu vou abrir my slides and
Professor, eu vou deixar a condução da live com você, que aí você consegue ter mais liberdade, mais espaço para mostrar a apresentação. Boa noite, pessoal. Boa sorte para todos no concurso de offshore.
Good. Okay. Hi, everyone. Right. So good to see you all. Yes, in Brasilia, Carla, it's hot here at the moment. And we're going to talk about how you're going to prepare for this. Now we know what the Edutawa is. Okay, we know it's Sebraspi. We know what has happened before. I'm going to talk about that to show you how we've prepared the course and what changes need to be made, okay, which I said would be the writing. And the discursiva, okay, which there's a separate course for that. But the course that's already there at Clipping gives you everything you need. So I'll explain that too. All right, so there's not a lot of changes that's needed. So let's go, shall we? Let me try and go to the next slide. Well, 15th of September, of course, be crazy answering questions, dealing with everyone being nervous, okay? But we've got time. It's not until December, okay? And this week and next week, any changes that need to be made will be made. I've made the first ones on the course already. The first class explains everything, all right? But there's not really a lot to do because if we look at the last two concursos, okay, was of course with the last one was with FGV, and then the previous one was with CESP. And in a way, this concurso is a combination of the two. When we've got sort of FGV being the first phase of the exam, the reading phase for English, and the second phase being more like CESP. All right, and we've been focusing on these two throughout the course, okay, doing a lot more types of writing so far than is now on the concurso. So the experience, if you've been on the course, the experience you've got of the different styles of writing, I think has been excellent. But now we've got to focus on one main one, okay? And I'll talk about the writing, of course, because that's the main difference. And the type of preparation needs to change too. So, of course, there were CESP and FGV in the past, and of course, CESP had a composition of 30 lines in 2006, a long time ago. Now, we'll talk about other concursos of Sebraspi when they've got English in a second, but see, the part one only had 8 questions, and part two was a composition of 30 lines. And of course, this year, let's say it's improved. Okay, so that was the past. Now we've got, let's say it's a CESP type, Sebraspi type exam, but in the second phase, because we have to focus on this main change, it's 3 hours. So we've got 45 minutes for Portuguese and 45 minutes for a composition of between 35 and 45 lines. Okay, so and I think with CACD for diploma, if you want to become a diplomat, it's 45 minimum. So we've got 45 between this. Okay, so that means 4 or 5 paragraphs of a question. Simple as that. So 45 minutes to write crazily a composition. Now, in the CACD, okay, so it's 90 minutes each. Oh, yeah, I always get it wrong, 90 minutes each. So Okay, 90 minutes each. So it's, so we're going to write crazily. It's plenty enough time to do, but we will need to go very carefully. Okay, why not meet Louisa? Because I realized I made a quick mistake there when I calculated it. All right, I apologize. So it's 90 minutes for an hour and a half, of course, which you've got the composition. I'm going to move over that one quickly. All right, I didn't check that one. I always think it's on. And in the past, sorry, the last exam, we had a lot more, an FGV, a lot more types of questions for reading. We had 20 this year, it's only 10. So when we look at the exam, okay, we're going to see that FGV is very similar to what we've got now with CBRASPI, 5 options. So the last exam, if you look at that, it's going to be the same as we've got now. So if we look at the last exam, we'll see that there are these 5 options, which is again what we see now with CBRASPI in the Edgerton. Okay, in the past, we've seen that, for example, with Apex was only 4 options, and that was in 2021. Okay, so now they've got to 5. So they're following more or less what we have on FGV. And the style of the questions, when we look at them, of course, this is in Portuguese. All right. The style of the questions are the same. So all of the material that we've done on the course of clipping, which is focused on FGV, is perfect for this first phase. Okay, there's a lot more information and a lot more practice, a lot more text on the course, than just the 10 questions you're going to get on the exam. So all of the types of grammar, all of the types of comprehension questions are focused on the course. There's a lot there. Okay, so when you go to the course, and I'm talking about FGV, of course, this is when I did this before the edital, but luckily, FGV is the same as CBRASPI. Okay, so that's good. So let's continue. I'm going to do this very quickly. I think I put another slide that says 45 minutes too. Okay, so the English composition in CBRASPI usually has been small, 20 lines. Now it's bigger. All right, so now, as I said, it's between 35 and 45 lines, but we can see the style of question they've got. So this style of question will be changed, have to be changed in the course, okay? So while we do have composition in the course, we had the FGV 3 types of questions, and I included summaries, and I included compositions, because we didn't know what was going to happen. Compositions of 30 lines. So those people doing the course, they will have compositions, okay? So they are practicing composition, but not 45 lines. So that's why we've got to change. And we can remove some of the questions and put more compositions, style questions like this on the exam, okay? So it's 90 minutes each. Yeah, I know it's 90 minutes. I don't know why when I was doing this, I wrote 45 minutes. 90 minutes each. So what are we going to do? We've got to have a clear strategy for those 90 minutes in Portuguese and in English. All right. Now, how long does it usually take an exam, say, Rio Branco preparation for the CACD? Well, people take 2.5 hours or 2 hours. Okay. So we have to be shorter here. The question is almost the same as the composition in the CACD. So, but we know how to prepare. We know the same strategy. We know we've got to plan. We know we've got to write a draft. And when we plan that behavior, okay, you do plenty of these exams, okay, these questions again and again and again, it becomes a routine. Okay, and by doing it under pressure, then you start to see your mistakes. So first, we're going to start off doing the compositions to make sure you've got the perfect organization. Okay, so then when you know how to organize and get that perfect mark, Then we're going to do it under pressure. And that's how things change, because you start making mistakes. Now, I compared this, talking to a colleague, with the IELTS exam. The IELTS exam usually wants a lot of stress on you. And we've got 90 minutes. The IELTS exam doesn't require us to do a draft. Here we've got about 20 minutes. We can make a draft, 15, 20 minutes to make, prepare a plan, and then, well, let's say half an hour to make a full draft, because then we need a perfect copy for the examiners to see, okay? We must have that. Now, in the Portuguese, we can see the type of questions in Apex, which Siblaspi did as well. They had 30 lines. Again, it's changed. It's become bigger. Okay, so let's have a look at the Concurso again. What does it say? Well, of course, we've got English in the first phase and English in the second phase. Giselle, you say, do you think that a person with intermediate English have a good chance of Concurso already learning with your techniques? Yes, I think, Giselle. Now, the Concurso says you have to have an advanced. But what is advanced? Now, have I been, when I worked at Rio Branco, were some of those students that passed the Concurso advanced? No. Many of them, no. They struggled when they got in, but they passed the Concurso, okay? Because we know how to write a good composition. We've only got to write a composition. And when we know what, let's say, grammar areas are advanced, we can use them to show the examiner that we're advanced, even though we're not. All right. Once an examiner once told me, many, many years ago, in IELTS, he once told me that he could tell anybody's level just by looking at the writing. And I thought, wow, that's such arrogance. So what happened? Years ago, in the Fernando Cardoso government, the government was sending everybody to England, Receita Federal, Comunidade Solidária at the time. They were going for specialist courses. I was doing a lot of IELTS training, which is a lot of stressful writing with people who did not have a good level. They had probably a lower intermediate level, and they needed to get to a higher level to go. And there's their dream. They were going to go to England for 6 months and learn new techniques to come back to Brazil and put them into place. So we knew how to, what we need to do, the bare minimum, so they get an excellent score and they classify. Could they speak English very well? No. And they were speaking in the exam, but prepared them exactly so they were going in like robots and passing. And they went to England, they struggled there. Some of them even came back crying, I can't stand it, I can't speak English, but they got there. Okay. So yes, there are ways we can do it. Remember, it's only one composition. So when we practice doing one composition again and again, those mistakes we'll see, because there's a limited amount of language that we need for composition. When on the course, on the Clipman course, we've got various different styles of writing because we included the FGV writing. Okay. Now we've only need the composition, and that is limited. Now the grammar and of the classes I've given, which are focused on composition, are perfect for what we're doing with this Concurso, with this Siblaspi composition. Okay. Daniel says, what's the best strategy to create a bigger essay with a good understanding for not to make mistakes? Do I have to go further on vocabulary? No, Daniel, don't have to go further on vocabulary, okay? Because the vocabulary we're doing on the course, as long as you are getting your notebook and writing it down, those collocations that I keep talking about, that's the language we need. That's sufficient, that amount of language. Remember, it's not a wide variety of language that we need, okay, for this. Of course, there are some grammar parts. Some people don't like using the present perfect. We need to use the present perfect, okay? But okay, we use it in a very restricted manner. Okay, there are some grammar areas that we can add in which are look a bit more advanced, and we just need to practice them. They're not difficult. You need to practice them, and then you need to know what your mistakes are. And that, again, is through practice. It's writing, writing, and writing. Yeah, Louise, this is usually saved. Okay, so I can't do any more than just tell you, you've got to write. Of course, write the compositions, okay? It's going to be organized just the same as we've been doing on the course, all right? Whether it's 4 or 5 paragraphs you're going to do, okay? 4 large paragraphs is usually more than enough, but 5 is fine as well. But the type of introduction we're going to do and the conclusion will be exactly the same as we'd actually do in the CACD. All right. So there's so many similarities and differences in this exam. Okay. So whatever exam I'm teaching, it always seems to be the same thing. All right. Your understanding of how to pass is by having a clear strategy and keep practicing that strategy. At first, of course, we write, as I said, to be organized, to know exactly how to answer the questions. We do that calmly, okay? And then we do it under pressure in those 90 minutes, okay? Then we learn about planning, we learn about drafting, and we learn about, of course, writing a very bonitinho copy of the final version. Now, the problem with the CACD this week was a few weeks ago, was so many saying, teacher, I don't have time to do a draft. I don't do a draft. They're the ones that fail. 90 minutes is enough for us to do a draft, a quick one, okay? But that has to be practiced because of the speed we need, all right? I know why I put 45 minutes. I'm going to tell you in a moment now. So it's the speed we need, okay? Of course, the concourse of the first one is, the first part is 3 hours and 30 minutes, and the second part is 3 hours, right? As it says, as I've mentioned before, I've got A, B, C, D, and E. Of course, 5 options, multiple choice question, just like the FGV. And God, did I work hard on those FGV exams to understand it, okay? So, there's lots of information around in the course. I really don't need to change. So on the course, even though it says FGV, I could take the label off on my videos and put CESP, and it would be fine. But I haven't got time to do that. Things are changing always. So, okay. So, great, PP. Okay. Well, law courses I will do next year, PP, okay? All right, so, but now we're focusing on offshore. Okay, so again, this is what I just took this off of the Concurso Edital and translated it, put it through ChatGPT and said, what is it? What's the information I need? And it gave me this. That's nice. Sometimes you can abuse ChatGPT. And it said, of course, there's going to be the 5 options, okay? And we just have to choose one correct option. And you'll see when you go through the course, I will talk about the bobo, stupid options they give you, and they get down to the 2, which you've got to be careful. So that's the strategy we'll look at, okay? So also, as I've already said, 35 to 45 lines for the composition. And of course, and it's got to be an advanced, a formal register. Okay, so no silly contractions, no using get, okay, no using in a nutshell or all in all, those ones that we don't want to use because we want to be really formal, Okay, use vocabulary of high level, which is very much like Portuguese, a Latin-based language, which is really good for us. Okay, so it's not that difficult. If you've got great Portuguese, in a way, it's going to help you also with your English, all right? So it's an advanced language, okay? It's formal, is it culto? It's educated, okay? And what have we got here? So the written test will judge, again, the candidate's understanding and knowledge of the subject matter. So on the course, we've got, of course, about the Ofchã, knowing what the Ofchã is. So there are other people from Ofchã. I saw Carlos Considerado last week. Excellent talk. There was another one as well, another Ofchã. It's important to know what they do. I use their information to help you with your vocabulary in English on the course. Okay, so we are able to write like an Ofchã, to know what their job is in English as well. Because as Carlos Considerado said, when you go off into the world representing Brazil, English will probably be the main language you're going to use. You're going to be dealing with the public a lot. Oh, Ludmila, could I please tell you the words and expressions that we must avoid? Well, simple things like, Ludmila, you're not going to use contractions. It's formal style. You're not going to use, what, there's an article I wrote called delexical verbs I once wrote for the BBC and British Council. These words like make, take, like get, as I said, and do. I want to use more Latin-based language that have a clear meaning. They're much more elegant. Okay, so in a way, that's why I said the Latin language is better. We don't want to use the silly things like the past perfect, because this is not a literary text. We want to use simple tenses. Of course, the present simple, present perfect, and the simple past. The 3 tenses, all that we need. And on the course, I show you how to, let's say, montar your composition using those correct ones, because people have problems with the present perfect. I don't know. I find it easy. So then I attach, because when we look at these types of composition, we look at the genre, okay, the style of writing, what is included in the type of vocabulary, the type of grammar that we're going to use, how it's organized, how it's linked together, and all of that. That information is on the course. You're not going to use, for example, Ludmila, those phrases like last but not least, or in a nutshell, or first and foremost. You know, that's seen as more intermediate level. We use it a lot more in speaking. So when I was doing speeches with diplomats, I would want them to include that. But when I'm doing writing with candidates, don't want to include those phrases, okay? In the first class, you'll see the phrases you need to use to have a cohesive text. Words that are elegant and are enough for you to sound really good, okay? Good. Next thing. So what do? We need the candidate's ability to express thoughts in writing, of course, and the commander's proficiency adhere to these formal rules. So, example, like not using contractions, okay? And please don't, when you write, don't cut the words at the end. I go crazy about this in the last month with candidates for CACD. The examiner might penalize you if you cut words off the end. So we don't want that. It makes it difficult for the examiner. We want the examiner to have an easy read. It doesn't have to be fantastic Shakespearean writing. Our ideas are much more important in English. Portuguese, let them make that grand, let's say, Machado style of language. In English, we don't really do that, okay? But we need to be formal and not make silly mistakes. So, 45 minutes. This is why I got 45 minutes. 45 minutes is the time we got to plan and do our draft. And then after that, we have got our time to make that bonitinho copy. okay? So they're not making any changes. So that is the big information we've got to see, okay? Okay, Matteo says, how much a head start does a CAE level speaker have at the test? Well, it depends on how good you are at CAE, Mateus, okay? It is good. You'll be doing the Cambridge CAE. I used to teach it a lot. It is a very, very good, and especially the styles. And also you're preparing for an exam, so you're focused. So you have a very good chance of scoring well, okay? But remember, this is a concurso. It's a strict way of writing. It's a certain way of writing that we have to practice, okay? So we make sure on the day, because with the CAE, you're going to make some mistakes, all right? The examiner allows that, all right? There's a different band for different types of CAE. What level of CAE you are, okay? Here, of course, it's a concurso. You have to get a top score. In 2015, 16, when the concurso, all of my students, I think most of them anyway, those top places were my students. I'm very happy because that was the first time I did Ofshan, and no one else was doing Ofshan. Okay, people have forgotten it in the last 8 years, except for me. I've been helping people to improve their English and had always an Ofshan course available. All right, I like Ofshan very much because exactly what you're worried about, how to push you up to that level, that higher level, okay? To push up to CAE. They say proficiency here, but what does proficiency mean? My level is proficiency, of course, but are you going to get my level? Probably not. All right, and it doesn't matter if you have, you've lived all your life in New York, let's say, and grew up there. Writing a composition with this style means you have to prepare very well. And I've had students who have been diplomats and made mistakes because they've been living abroad. I've made mistakes in the exam, okay? So it's just good preparation is what you need, okay? If you're an intermediate or advanced level, remember you've only got, even a low intermediate, you've only got one chance. And if you prepare for that one chance, that one composition, you can always do very, very well, okay? Prepared many people. Professor, could you offer some advice on self-assessment? Well, you're going to assess yourself, Paolo. Is that what you mean? You're going to advise, well, what can you do to do that? I suppose find a teacher, all right, and talk to them and then see what your level is. But really, you've got to, don't worry about level. It's passing the concurso. As I said, with Rio Branco ex-students, I would get into the first day of class and we'd start talking and debating, and there would always be some who could not produce English. They weren't fluent. You think they were with the level they have to pass. They struggled. And when we got only towards the end of the year, when we've hit them and, really been not cruel, but forced them to speak, and they have to compete with all of the others, that's when they were good. So we need that pressure to push you up to the higher level, and we've got a clear objective. So that helps in our performance to get you to a high level, okay? Okay, for writing practice, well, believe it or not, I use ChatGPT, but it's not really very good, all right? Sometimes I use ChatGPT a lot at the moment, all right, but I have to do a lot of work with it, especially for concurso. It's not the same thing, because Clipping, for example, did an experiment. They put the CACD, the concurso for Rio Branco, they put it through ChatGPT to see what score it would it pass. And it would. So they gave me I didn't know this. They gave me a composition blind, and I looked at it and I said, no, this person's got the wrong genre, the wrong style. Okay, the level of writing is very advanced, great, but it wouldn't pass because it wouldn't be what the examiner wanted. And that's what we've got to do, okay? So even though we passed it through ChatGPT, and they said, and I got it and passed it through ChatGPT, And it said, yeah, this is really advanced. This is wonderful writing. But knowing from my experience, I know it wouldn't pass. It would have got half the points because it wasn't following the rules of the concourse, okay? The one that they gave me, which they said was written by, I don't know if it was written by ChatGPT or assessed by ChatGPT, but it's a possibility that you can use to work with Power, all right? But there's no better way than having a teacher like me, all right? Because I don't want to do myself down, do I? Who knows what they're doing is going to be so bad in marking everything of you that you're going, not cry, but you're going to know everything about your English, okay? Because you can't see, when you write, what these AIs can't see is that behavior in your written work. You've got to write by pen. And that also is another thing. So students who write and type for me, they do it in many of my courses, they type, and they send it to me, and I check that the organization's fine, the vocabulary is fine. But when they move to write by hand, which you can't really go through a computer and check it, okay, then we see more problems with spelling, which you didn't have when they were writing or typing, problems with there too many words in the line or too few, okay, they're correcting all of the time. That means they didn't plan very well, okay, or they didn't do a draft. And those are the things you don't get with self-assessment, okay? Okay, so Mandy, so talk to about the correction package. So talk to Clipping about that. I don't know about buying and selling. I produced the courses. That's what they've got to do, okay? I'm here to help. Okay. So as I joined Clipping not long ago. Well, Felipe, I'm gonna, for the writing, I would wait a little while, yeah? The writings, you know, I've done lots of writings already and prepared it. Just takes a little bit of time for us to make a little change of the course, all right? Because there's all technology to do as well. And I want to do it a certain way, right? I want to do it a certain way with Clipping, all right? There's all of that information. There's those other teachers as well. And when they've got to change it, okay? But we're up to date. We know what we're doing. Just taking that little bit of time, okay? And I'm here in a way to help with this anxiety you have. There's so many people are sending me questions for information, but don't worry, we've got it in hand, and we've got until December, all right? I don't know how many compositions I'm going to do yet. I'm going to see how many needs to be, but the overview of the course will be the same, okay? There's this part 1 and part 2 where we focus on the grammar and vocabulary, and we keep focusing on the grammar, reading, vocabulary. There's a lot of information, okay? And then we look at the writing strategy, which is now a separate part with correction. But I do talk a lot about other styles of FGV, of course, and talk about CESP and compositions. The composition I talk about currently on the course is the same style, although it's 30 lines, it's the same style that we've got this year, okay? Yeah, those daily readings at Clipping are very good, Felipe. And the information Homero says online, I like it when I receive it here on Instagram as well. I like Instagram. It gives me the information quickly as well. And mine's very much directed to the concorso, so I don't have lots of people dancing or farting or doing all those strange things that that my wife can show me sometimes when she is looking at it. But anyway, Instagram seems to be the best one for lots of information. And of course, there is information like Petit Journal as well. That's very, very good for these atualidades. These that's very much. But let's talking about atualidades, okay? These are the atualidades, let's say, the general knowledge. What's not really general knowledge, the subjects we have to think of. Now, I've been teaching someone very high up in the government, okay, in this current government, not in Itamaraty, someone out who needed English because they took over a very, very important job. They were in the UN the other day, traveling around the world. And he always talks about presidential diplomacy. That's how things are at the moment. Lula is doing presidential diplomacy. He's getting out there and he's meeting those leaders. And he's, as he said yesterday, was it yesterday? Brazil is back. All right. So what subjects? So we know with the Lula government, with this government, their focus on, that's why we have the concursos as well, their focus on international relations is extremely important. With the last government, no. So the state has changed its focus back to it before. It's not really a government, it's the state's view now has come back. And we see these are the main topics. You know, Brazilians' role in international organizations, United Nations, WTO, of course, Mercosur, the challenging opportunities that we've got at the moment with diplomacy trying to Brazil is back, okay, going back to Africa, talking in the BRICS. And that BRICS come with economic diplomacy, okay, where we've got, well, for example, at the moment we've got Dilma, of course, is the head of the BRICS banks, but also we're talking about, Lula's been talking about currency, of course, new currency for trade with Argentina as well. So there have been other solutions, and BNDES offering loans outside of the country. Okay, and going back to Africa. Emerging global challenges, of course. Well, you can see there with the COP30 and the environment, and also with world trade is very, very important for this. This is very important. Well, William, isn't the composition too diplomatic? Well, we have to have an appreciation of this. You're going into diplomacy. So if you were to watch, William, go and watch what Carlos Considerado said, okay? He said all of these, because I wrote them down, okay? And of course, we do have number 9 and 10, you know, diplomatic execution representation, which is offshore, consular services and protection of citizens abroad, and of course, how AI is used as well. So these administrative tasks also important, but we don't know what the question is going to be. But of course, it might, but these are more general. When it comes to, for example, the diplomatic ones, they're talking about negotiation representation a lot more than you'd be expected, okay? But you'll have to understand these main roles of the government. And that's why reading clipping, getting these information from clipping all of the time, okay, helps you to update. Do you have to be a diplomat? No. But you are going to, if you go to a job in a company, let's say, all right, you've got to research a little bit about the company. You've got to know what your job is going to be involved with, okay? And of course, if you go to, let's say, you're posted in Africa, you're going to know about the South-South agreement and how, let's say, social initiatives are helping in those countries you are, how trade is opening. We're going to receive people from APEX, maybe. Okay, so those things are important for an offshore, okay? Okay, so I don't, if quality is low, I'm sorry. This is, but they're the main topics and they're the questions, William, we're going to do on this, okay? So you might not be great on the environment, okay? But you might be good on consular services, but you have time now to study them. You don't have to know them now. So when, for example, I'm giving you a composition, I say, write about the BRICS. You're going to write something. It doesn't have to be very deep, as in with the exam of the CACD, okay? But you have to have that appreciation, okay? And that's why we have to, let's say, broach these subjects, okay? Not all of them, but some of them for you to have, like the environment is certainly important for Brazil. Okay, so you've got to have an appreciation of that, all right? So you're going for a job. This is your interview, really. And so we've got to know an offshore is a very, very important position in an embassy or in the government, okay? So those who are assistentes want to go up to full offshores, okay? Who are out there as well. Probably are doing the job as an offshore at the moment. We need more offshores. And that's why the government is putting out this, at last, this concurso. Okay, fine. Well, I think that's it. That is, so those subjects have to be embraced, William, okay? But, you know, we've got how many months? We've got October, November, December, 3 months to study, all right? And I would like you to write about some of these subjects, because that's going to focus on the vocabulary you need. Because these are intelligent questions you're going to respond. They're not going to be really very easy. It pushes you to think. All right. I think there's the CACD, the diplomats, people preparing for diplomats feel that sometimes I push them a little too harder than it's been in the last few exams, but they're ready. Okay, and you'll be ready too. Okay, now, there's a famous offshore. Okay, you might one day be you might be a judge at the SDF, right? So there's a long way to go, and offshore has got a chance to go further up in the world. Bit of a fun information there. Our deacon was an offshore too. Did you know that? Okay, fine. So you can watch this again. I always watch my ugly face again and listen to what I've got to say. But I hope, in a way, it shows that we don't know what we're doing. The Edutalis comes out. We've been here before. Okay, we know where you're going. So, of course, everyone wants the information now, but in the right time, in the right place, you'll have plenty of preparation. With so much, Clipping has so much information, okay? And I don't think any other concurso company has so much information, because it's focused on the etymology. It's not focused on every concurso, it's focused on the etymology, okay? Now, I came to them last, said, look, we've got to be ready for offshore. So we're preparing before the Edutail, all right? Because we know that people, especially English, you need more time, all right? You need a specific preparation too. Ok? Bom, espero que tudo foi tranquilo. Qualquer questão, claro, pode. Vou praticar meu português um pouquinho. Pode perguntar aqui no Clipping, ok? Tem pessoal está esperando para seus dúvidas, ok? O curso já está feito, mas vai mudar um pouquinho, ok? Para focar no composition, redação discursiva, or whatever you want to call it, ok? Good. Hope that's okay. All the best, and hopefully you will see me in a video in the future, teaching you something, and with all of those exercises, okay? In the next week or so, all of this will be done and ready, and you'll be relaxed, okay? And prepare for, is it the 9th or 10th of December, when it's the exam. Good, all the best. I'm going to go off and do some dancing with my wife, and I wish you all, it's Thursday, isn't it? I'm going traveling tomorrow, São Paulo. So, see you all, hopefully online. Ciao, ciao, all the best. Bye-bye.